Good evening, and welcome to this virtual leadership talk, sponsored and supported by the Clergy and Lay Leadership Development Team of the Desert Southwest Conference of the United Methodist Church. My name is Alberta Farnsworth, and as a member of the Clergy and Lay Leadership Development Team, I am privileged to be your host this evening. Our guest presenter is Dr. Pennie Jeannie Hughes. She has lots of names, and we can call her any of them, she says. So I generally call her Jeannie because that's how I met her, 5 or 6 years ago. So Jeannie is a deaconess, and she serves as Desert Southwest Conference laity wellness leader. Her home church is St. Mark's United Methodist Church in Tucson. As a deaconess, Dr. Hughes actively participates in United Women of Faith, both in her home church as well as other units. Jeannie holds several degrees from Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado, Spanish, business administration, and a double master's degree in English as a second language, and diverse learners and linguistics. Jeannie is a former pastor and a worldwide itinerant evangelist with the Church of the Nazarene prior to her last 20 years as a United Methodist member. Dr. Hughes' doctorate of ministries are in Christian education, and her second doctorate of ministry is in psychology and counseling. She has also had other careers as an educator, author, public speaker, and singer recording artist. She's the mother of 6, has 14 grandchildren, and will soon have a great-grandchild. Her husband, Richard, closest friend and best supporter, has been with her hand in hand for over 40 years. I'll turn this over to you.
Okay. And I'm with you tonight from New York City. So I'm far, far away, but I'm there with you in spirit, back west. Well, this is really funny because when I chose this first sentence that you'll see in the PowerPoint, you will see how that matches with some of our little challenges tonight with trying to get together over many miles and through Zoom. So you'll see, how do we survive leadership positions in today's world and not grow angry and weary? And that is the truth. Sometimes we have to be really flexible, very flexible. Be certain of one thing: the measure of your life will be the measure of your courage. And I think that's something else we have to think about when we want to talk about leadership. And I chose the title Love, Lead, Learn, and Lean for a reason. I thought that as I reviewed and thought about leadership, I had a lot of different characters in my mind. And Alberta will show you the next slide.
Well, I thought I would.
You will, I'm sure. There we go. So as we look at this, I wanted us to think about ourselves as leaders. What kind of leaders are we? Are we the ones that are standing in the middle, that are straight-laced and yet hiding something? Are we the one on the right who's wants to be a friendly leader, but constantly looks over their shoulder to see what's going on, has to kind of micromanage things? When you look at these characters, which kind of leader do you think you might be? Let's go to the next slide, and we'll look at things that we have to be. We have to be a communicator to be a leader. We have to inspire. We have to be a change agent, and we have to be a visionary. So as we look at the next slide, I want you to think, which type of animal are you as a leader? Are you a snake? Are you a bear that you can be gruff and grumbly? Are you a lion? Are you soft little panda? Or you are a leader like an elephant? These are all silly ways to think about your leadership, but I think they're important. I think we have to think of ourselves with some kind of a picture in mind, because that's really how people see us. As we come together tonight, when we go into the topic of love, which will be on our next slide, I want to talk about love first, because I think it's one of the most important things. If we can't love ourselves, love the Lord, have a love for our leadership position, we're not going to be very effective. And I thought, as we go to a breakout, I wanted to have it only be 5 minutes. And there's a reason for this. There's 2 questions. Why are you a good leader? I just want you to think very quickly and say whatever couple words come to your mind that you feel you are a good leader with. And then I want you to think of the next question. What do you love about the way you lead? So why are you a good leader? And what do you love about the way you lead? And then what I'd like us to do is come back and address these 2 sentences, these 2 questions. I want us to just not dwell on them. So I'm going to have Alberta break us into sessions, little rooms. I don't know how many people there are now, Alberta. I don't know how many have come on.
I've got 3 different rooms.
Okay,
with 3.
all right, we will do that. And then be prepared to come back in 5 minutes and share with us with these 2 questions. Why were you a good leader when you answered the question? Did anybody come up with anything they'd like to share?
I said that it was important to try to draw people in to whatever it was that you were leading in and talking about. And to do that, sometimes you have to ask a specific question that requires an answer, and not just with a yes or a no.
Great. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Deneen, did you talk about what you love about the way you lead when you've led people?
I didn't. I had difficulty getting onto the session to start off with.
Oh, okay.
You came in a little late, but
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
Yeah, we had a few things. A good communicator. Being a good communicator was one of the things that makes us a good leader. Stepped up to do it, to get the job done. That was one big thing that can make you a good leader. Being flexible, having a good attitude, which translates to, making the group or the team, feel good about doing the actual job, and able to get to a decision. Someone that is able to keep focused, keep the group and task focused to get a decision.
Right.
Decisions made. So those were the things that we had.
Good. Judy, go ahead.
And being a good leader too, sometimes you have to step in and in a pleasant way cut somebody off if they are going off topic when you're in a discussion, and you want people to join in and express experiences and so on. Sometimes they go off at an angle, and somehow as a good leader you've got to try and draw them back into what is the topic that's being discussed.
Right, that's true. We have to be diplomatic at the same time that we do no harm. I think those are important things. So that's a good point too. Judy or Jim, did you want to share anything from our group?
We were talking about leadership styles, whether they're collaborative or autocratic, and how collaborative seems to work a whole lot better. But Jeannie brought up a real good point about being able to pivot whenever we have a change in, what would you say, in the structure of the class or the group that you're leading, you might need to change it from autocratic to collaborative to back and forth. So that's real good too.
Right, right. And I liked what we brought up too, is that both you and Judy brought up that you have passion, that you love being able to lead, and that you care about people. And I think that that's a really important thing, because some people get in a leadership position and they really don't get empathy and they don't get compassion. So sometimes you have to question, really, why is this person in a leadership position? And that can become particularly hard when a lot of people are working as volunteers or they're in the ministry. Those become even a little bit trickier sometimes. So that's why I wanted to bring up love in the very beginning, is I felt that that was so important. I wanted us to remember 1 Corinthians 16:14. Let all that you do be done in love. And I believe that that definitely goes along with leadership. It just has to, no matter what position you're in. If there is no love, there really isn't a lot that can be successful. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own. It's not irritable or resentful. That's a tough one, especially in leadership. It can be really tough. And I know that, as a school principal, there were many, many times I had to really work hard to dig deep for grace and to look for patience and to not be irritable and to not be resentful. Mm-hmm. Above all, clothe yourself with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. We find that in Colossians. Going on to Ephesians, with all humanity and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. May the Lord direct your hearts to the love of God and to the steadfastness of Christ. 1 Thessalonians 3:5, and above all, maintain constant love for one another, for love covers a multitude of sins. We find in 1 Peter. We love because he first loved us. And that's 1 John 4:19. And when I prayed for God to show me the love verses that he really felt strongly that are inclusive with leadership, these are what came to me. And as I typed them and I read them and I read them again, I found that I could read them as a paragraph. Just read them without using the quotes, and it read smoothly all the way through. And I thought, boy, this is something that I feel like I need to make a copy of it and glue it to one of my mirrors in my house or something. Because I just believe that it is so important in the way that we respond to things that happen. Churches are filled with people. People make mistakes. And we have to dig deep sometimes for grace. So I think it's important to know these kinds of verses that we can draw on. And as we were thinking about love, and at the very beginning, I had Alberta show you the little cartoons about leaders, what kind of leaders we want to be. It then came to my mind that we have to learn to trust ourselves. If we're leaders, we have to know what we're going to do and what we're going to say next. We have to trust ourselves. And when I listened to the last talk, I think it was it Sherry Hull that did the last talk? I think it was. Yeah. One of the folks that was on said that sometimes she didn't feel she could trust that she had what it takes to be a leader and hold the position of lay leader. Or maybe they were a president with UWF now and weren't sure about that. And I got to thinking about that. I thought, sometimes we don't trust ourselves as leader, but God calls us, and he never calls us to do anything that he hasn't prepared us to be able to do. So I remembered that in Braving the Wilderness with Brene Brown, she brought up about braving. And I thought that this was really a good thing to include. And so I did include this. And you can see self-trust and trusting others. B is for boundaries. Did I respect my own boundaries? And was I a leader about what's okay and what's not? And I think that's about setting parameters in your meetings, how the meetings are run, how people feel when they're in the meetings, if they feel confident. So I think boundaries are important for everybody. And R is to ask yourself, was I reliable? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Did I carry through? Can I be counted on? A is accountable. Did I hold myself accountable? Remember, this is about self-trust. This is not about everybody else. This is about you being able to trust yourself when you go into meetings, when you run a committee, when you ask for volunteers. These are things when Sherry said that we have to know why we're doing things, this is part of that. This is what comes before sometimes knowing clearly what the why is and being able to get the why across to other folks. Sometimes you have to know that you have met these self-trust items. So you've got boundaries, reliable, accountability. V, did I respect the vault and share appropriately? We have to be businesslike. We can't play at church. We need to be a church. There's, I think, a difference. We're not just playing at something, we're being that something. So we need to be trusted. Did I act with integrity? As a leader, do I demonstrate integrity with others? And did I ask what I needed? Was I misjudged? And I also want to add what Brene Brown did not add, clarity. I know it's an I needed, but along with the misjudged, was I misunderstood? Was I clear about what I'm asking for and what I need from others? And the last is generous toward myself. That's a hard one for me. Often I'm very generous with others, but I'm not as generous with myself. I cut myself short. Sometimes I not taking over the meeting, but taking over too much of the work myself, that I forget to trust myself in leading others. So I need to be a little more generous with myself and my time. So I think that that's important. Alberta, we can go to the next little slide. It's another one of the little cartoons I came across.
There we go.
I thought this was a good one. You have to think about it a minute. You have to look at it. I hope I made it big enough. Get it? He's created his own little staff. He keeps having so much staff turnover in his church that he's made little cardboard figures on the platform. And sometimes we do this, we sabotage our own committees, and we have to be careful and conscious about the turnover. If people are leaving a committee or a meeting that we're leading and they continue to do that, we need to talk to them, and we need to talk to ourselves, and we need to be brave enough and courageous enough to ask if there's a problem with our leadership. Because you don't want to run volunteers or staff or anybody else away. We can go to the next slide and go into leading. This is from Jorge Acevedo and Wes Old. It's a book called A Graceful Life. And as I have said before, a lot of times as leaders, we have to dig really deep for grace. And we have to do that for other things too, even in our own households. So here's a question that they posed in their book. Where do you fit and I in the goodness ladder? Do we think that we're 60% good, 50% good? Are we 40% good? If we're honest, most of us would probably say that we fall somewhere below Mother Teresa and John Wesley. So after I read that, I went to something that John Wesley wrote. I went to America to convert the Indians, but oh, who shall convert me? Who shall deliver me from this heart of unbelief? Oh, who will deliver me from fear of death? I have a fair summer religion. I can talk well, nay, and believe myself, while no danger is near. But let death look me in the face, and my spirit is troubled. Nor can I say to die is to gain. So I want us to think about that in connection with our leadership. Do you ever doubt your calling as a leader? Do you doubt your faith? And do you doubt your abilities? Again, if we're going to find and ask the questions of why are we doing what we do? And why are we talking about being a specific type of leader? I think we have to admit that oftentimes we fall short and oftentimes we don't have the faith that God's going to help us carry through. So I want us to break into rooms again and just have a chat about these three questions and see what we come up with together. Alberta, if you want to break us into rooms.
Can you put the questions in the chat for us?
Yes, I will.
What comments did we get from everybody? Anyone want to speak up?
Comment was you disappeared in our group.
I know. I just
So we talked
twitched
about
my nose like bewitched and I was gone.
you.
Richard had some nice things to say about you. Well, I think, you know, yeah. This is Jeannie Ward. And yeah, as far as doubting the calling as a leader, I don't doubt my spiritual faith, but I sometimes doubt my faith of getting things done. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, for us, one of the things that came up was in that first one, doubting your calling as a leader, is that it was not so much doubting our calling as a leader, but whether that particular leading that particular group or thing was what we should be doing. Because in a lot of cases, I know certainly a couple of us, and speaking for myself, I can say that I end up volunteering for a lot of things, too many things. And, you know, then I find that you know, it seems like I'm not doing good at anything because I got so many things going on, too many things.
Mhm.
So the question is everything, well, the answer is everything is not for you. So, being prayerful about what we volunteer for or to determine that we're going to lead, and letting God guide us to what we should do instead of saying, oh, yeah, I'm a volunteer for that. I'm a volunteer for that. Because you know what? I feel like I have a lot of gifts and okay, I want to use them all. So God said, so this thing is out there and somebody needs to lead it and no one's stepping up. So, hey, I got to do it. No.
Right.
Sometimes no is the answer.
Right. And that does happen to a lot of us that had a former life, and we know that we can lead some of these different positions in the churches. We know that we can do it, and others don't come along. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Michael. It's very hard to say no sometimes. We want to be rescuers and we want to help out. Yeah. Anything else anybody come up with?
I
You'd
have
like-
one more thing. It's just
Sure.
that as a leader, one of the things you should do is train to be a good leader is not to just keep everything, controlled by you, is to train other people that, if you weren't there, they could take over. So I know that's one of the signs of a good leader is to always, keep someone, keep them involved and in training, basically. Don't be afraid of losing your job.
Right. That's a good point, Jeannie. I know that in business college, one of the very first things they drilled into our head is to be a good administrator, surround yourself with competent people. Don't be afraid. They're not going to take any of the glory from you. Just surround yourself with competent people. And so that's a very good point that you've made. Yeah. Anything else? Well, let's move on to the next section about learning. So when we talk about learning, we're going to shift a little bit from the leadership hat to being a leader, but we have to also talk about educating, just what we were talking about, Jeannie. If we're going to teach people and bring them along so that we have good leadership behind us or people trained to do specific things, we have to ask ourselves 4 main questions as we look at people that we're working with and that we're leading. We need to take a look at how they seem to learn. Are they a visual learner? Are they an auditory learner? Are they kinesthetic? Do they need to be writing and reading everything? So we need to pay attention and not just come in and talk at people. We need to make sure that we're covering a number of ways that people can learn from us. We need to demonstrate. We need to talk about it. We need to practice it. We need to play games with it. We need to use colors. People are never too old to learn things in different ways. And if we're training people to do something and we model the behaviors, we have a little fun with it, we do things in colors, people will learn and the information will stick. And that's really important because sometimes we get caught up with just talking and lecturing and stuff doesn't stick. I'm a note taker. I have to take notes, then I have to highlight them in colors, and I have to doodle, and I have to do all kinds of things. So everybody that you're working with in teams and committees have those same issues. They're visual learners, they're auditory learners, they're kinesthetic learners. So you need to help them learn from you. You can't just assume that if you tell somebody something, they're going to be able to remember it or they're going to be able to do it. So we have to not just be a good leader, but we have to be a good educator as well. I think that's really important. Alberta, we can go on to the next one. I liked this one. I'm still going with our textbook. I don't care what Wikipedia says. And I'll explain why I used that little cartoon in a minute. My phone just closed and I've lost my, go ahead to the next slide, Alberta. I can't see what the next slide is. Oh, okay. No, Adam, awesome is not an acceptable choice of what you want to be when you grow up. These were two examples that I picked of people you might have that show up on your committees. People that will research something and show you that they're an expert, like the little student that used Wikipedia. Or you might have somebody on your committees that already think that they are awesome. And then what do? Go ahead to the next slide, Alberta. We need to communicate properly. We need to know the group of people that we're working with. That's another thing. Sometimes we end up with folks who volunteer. We have people come along and we don't really know them and we don't know what their background is. We need to be willing to ask for feedback and be willing to take it. We need to listen to the feedback. And we need to take time. Don't rush. This is a big problem I have. I think everything has to happen too quickly. And I have to pull the horses back. I have to rein them back. Remember the different kind of learners that you're going to have. You've got to know what that group or the person is, and you have to know how to communicate appropriately to them. You've got to listen to what's going on and ask for feedback. And then don't rush, take time. Remember the past leaders that you have admired. Remember what it is about their style that you so loved. Also, when you're getting ready to meet with a group of people, jot down some notes. Remind yourself how you want to respond, how you want to act, and how you want to run the meeting. Make a script for yourself. Make notes so that you can remember what style it is that you want to adopt. You don't have to be phony, but maybe your style needs to be tweaked just a little bit. Maybe there's somebody that you like and you admire how they make a presentation or how they lead, and you'd like to adopt some of those styles. So jot down notes to remind yourself as you're leading a meeting. Just give yourself a little cue card when you need it. Okay, next slide. We're going to go into a part called lean, and I think that's real important too. So I found this little guy. When a tree falls in the forest, you okay, Lenny? No, I'm not okay. And I think that that's what happens to us sometimes in the forest among leaders, is sometimes one or two of us may fall. And I think it's important that we learn as leaders to lean on each other. Go ahead to the next slide. I got going on these cartoons about trees falling down and I couldn't get away from them. If a tree falls on a philosopher in the woods and no one is there to hear his screams for help, did he really make a sound? Do we make a sound if we need help? Do we lean? Does anybody hear us? Go ahead to the next one. We have to remember that we're standing on some very, very hefty promises. You can go to the next one, Alberta. Remember the hymn? The hymn by Russell Kelso Carter from 1886, inspired by his time in the military. He wrote, "Standing on the promises of Christ my King." I know that we've all sung that, and it's just so wonderful. Go back and read those words and know that we really, as leaders, have got to remember what promises we're standing on. and we are standing on the promises of Christ, our King. Go ahead to the next slide. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. That's by Helen Keller. And in Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. And Howard Schultz, and with the right mentor, don't be afraid to expose your vulnerabilities. Admit you don't know what you don't know. And when you acknowledge your weaknesses and ask for advice, you'll be surprised how much others will help. I think these are three things that we can use to remember. And I know when I was a school principal, there were days that were so difficult at times that I just didn't know if there was anybody that I could lean on or trust many times. So I oftentimes relied on quotes that helped me to be strong. Go ahead to the next slide. We've had these kind of people at our meetings. It's time for math, Billy. Stop working the room. Have you ever had the takeover artists that have come to your meetings? And you wonder what's happened? Go ahead to the next one. Never be tyrannical. You may have takeover artists that will join you on some of your committees and in some of your meetings or your congregations if you're a pastor. So we need to be careful in our response. And I think Michael brought that up earlier when we were talking about one of the different sections. There is a very interesting book that we read and studied as I was going through the seminary classes for my deaconess position. And the book is called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. Never be tyrannical. And these are 4 things that he listed. Language. Be kind to our language and think up your own way of saying things. Read and educate yourself. Think and separate yourself. The next is believe in truth. If things are not truth, they are only spectacle. Don't apply magical thinking to issues. Don't use endless repetition to make something true. And we have definitely heard this in the last years of our lives, that things come out on the news, we hear things, they're repeated over and over until somehow, magically, they become truth. So I think we have to be careful in believing in truth. We have to investigate, figure things out for yourself, research, use your facts. Remember, the leader who dislikes the investigator is a potential tyrant. Listen for dangerous words. Be alert to use words. Be ready to act upon danger, but do no harm. Be kind and love the Lord. Always be mindful. As Methodists, we have a method. Now, I added on that last sentence. That is not a sentence that was in Timothy Snyder's book. So I made that in capital letters because I think that is also a way as Methodists, we do not become tyrannical. We do no harm. We are kind. We love the Lord. And we are always mindful. As Methodists, we have a method. Go ahead to the next one. I want to talk to you as we start winding down about the Peter principle. I think it's very important as leaders, we don't find ourselves in this position. And I will explain what the Peter principle is. Next slide. Have you ever come across people who are unhappy after receiving a promotion? or seen a football coach promote some of his star team players only to discover that they're somewhat struggling to cope in their new positions. Well, the reason for such incidences is clearly explained in the Peter Principle theory. The Peter Principle is a common occurrence among companies whereby employees are promoted according to their current progress rather than for the skills and aptitude required for the roles they are being considered for. How many times have we met people that have risen to a position that they have absolutely no capabilities to do? That is the Peter Principle. They rise to these positions, but they are incapable of completing the position in which they're in. Go ahead to the next slide. So as we finish, I want us all to end up as successful leaders. I want us not so much to look like the animals that we saw in the beginning or the cartoon characters we saw in the beginning, but I want us to be confident, to trust ourselves, to trust the Lord that he hasn't given us anything that we cannot do. And if he has, or we have volunteered for something we cannot do, that we can trust others and lean on others and say, look, I just don't think this is for me. We need to find somebody else. So I want us to think about these four things: loving and learning and leaning. I think it's important for us to have all the components. If we are asking the questions why, first we need to step back and we need to take a look at then how can we get folks to feel confident with our why enough that they want to follow us. So we want to be good leaders. I think that's the end. I don't see my PowerPoint anymore, so I can't tell. Is that the last slide, Alberta? I think I just
Looks
have.
like it.
I think I just had
Yep.
references of the books that I used.
Yeah.
If anybody
Yeah. There's
wanted
six.
to know, there's some books there that I pulled some of my information from, and the rest I pulled from my memory bank. So did we have any comments or questions?
What if you find you're in a position and once in it, you're just aware that it's not a good fit for you and you're not doing a good job as a leader?
Did you volunteer or did somebody place you there?
Well, that's what's happened in the past a lot, where nobody volunteers, so we step into it, or someone says, oh, I think you'd be good at that, and so you say yes, and you get into positions where you really aren't good at it.
Well, there's several things I would think. One is if you can find somebody that had that position before you or somebody that knows about that position, look for a resource. If it's a leadership, like it's a lay, local lay church leadership position, and you just don't know what you're supposed to really be doing, then you need to go to our conference level person that is directing that, and you need to have a conversation with them and say, look, I'm floundering, and then get some help. That's the leaning and the learning. If this is not, somebody's asked you to be the treasurer and math is definitely not your subject, then I think I would either go to the pastor or go to your church board president or go to somebody and say, I just can't do this. We need to throw this position back out and look for a volunteer. I think if we can't do something and we said yes, just because nobody else would say yes, I'm not so sure that God would want us to do that. So that takes courage, because then you have to go back and say, I don't trust myself in this position. I just don't think this is for me. There's other things I can do, but this is not one of them. I gave it a try, and it's not good for me. I think that's perfectly fair to do. Yeah, Jeannie.
Yeah, sometimes when we're in a position, say it's a district position, and that puts you on about 3 or 4 conference teams. You have to be honest with yourself, because if you already have enough going on, you have to just say to them, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to be on this particular conference team, or, you have to be honest with yourself. And I'm finding, that happens in a lot of situations. So, but it's not easy to do. But if you're doing a really good job and you're coping with either your health, your local church, your district work, and then you also have been, it puts you, automatically on a conference team. You would like to serve, but if you're honest with yourself and with them, you have to say, I can't do this. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I have found myself, Esther, in the same thing, and Alberta can tell you. She and Deb Williams asked me if I could do a position for conference, and I just knew that it was just perfect for me. My credentials, my experience, my language skills, everything was just perfect. And then my mom got ill and she got more and more sick, and I couldn't get anything going. And then, and I had to do something that it hurt me, it pained me. And I said to Alberta and to Deb, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And sometimes we just have to do that. And they still haven't filled the position, sadly. It hasn't been filled in all these years, but yeah, sometimes for the greater good, which I know sounds kind of pithy at times, but sometimes we're not helping anything by trying to do something that we can't do.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard. Anything else that kind of popped out at you tonight? Nothing else? Deneen, did you have your hand up? Do I see your hand? You're on mute. No? Okay.
No, I didn't have my hand up. I don't know. I just feel I'm not doing anything as a leader these days. And I don't feel able to. But I appreciate people who are leaders and do amazing things over time.
And
what do you say? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Judy.
I was just thinking you might be in the season that it's not time for you to be a leader, but we all lead regardless of our title. So, what you do to support the people that you think are in leadership positions, is being in a way, it's a leader to show others how to be supportive or encouraging or any of that, right? So
yeah, I like that.
Can't always think of leaders as just the person, the pastor or the lay leader or just anybody with a title, right? We're all part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And
well, I have a job for my church that I do, but very few people know that I do it, and that's fine by me. I just do it and go ahead with it. And I appreciate being able to be doing something for my church in that way.
Well, I have to tell you that Deneen, whether she wants to face that she's a leader or not, I've been able to lean on her a lot. And I have also learned a lot from her, and we have shared a lot of love. So she is still a leader in that she can mentor someone like me and also support me in prayer and in love and in guidance, because I respect Deneen for her wisdom. So you're right, Judy. This is a different season for Deneen, but yet I don't know what I would do without her. So there you go. Yeah. So, yeah.
I was just
Well-
gonna add, I really liked how you added on the lean part. I think a lot of times when you're a leader, everybody thinks, you're strong, you got it. And leaning is something we need to be able to do. But I think we need to make sure that we offer that soft place for the leader to be, because it can't just be, it is our responsibility to ask for help. But sometimes when you're marching along, you don't realize you need help. So having people around you that create that soft spot, like you're saying that Deneen does for you, right? That's something that is just important. It's real easy to think that somebody's all together and they've got this, but even they need to know that they're supported and cared for. So lean is a good addition.
Well, that's the two trees in the forest with the one that's fallen over and the other guy says, "Are you all right, Lenny?" And he says, "No, I'm not." I thought about our pastors oftentimes too. Sometimes as other leadership positions in the church, they just need to know too that there's a person that they can trust in another leadership position that they can say something to, or when they're having a hard day to survive as a leader, they can make a comment to. And there's a whole huge part about the trust that is really big in leadership. And all of us that have had other careers, we knew who we could trust in places where we worked, and then we knew other people you didn't want to say too much when you were around them. So I think the leaning is a big thing. Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Thinking of my father, he was the guy that a lot of the pastors leaned on. He was the guy that they would come talk to, and he would counsel with them kind of as a mentor. And I remember one time the church board and the church that I was going to had a list of things that they demanded of the pastor. And one was quit talking to Frank Hughes. So they didn't want him leaning on anybody. But I can remember going out into the country and my sister and I playing with his daughter while his wife talked to my wife in one car and he talked to my dad in another car where nobody would see them talking together, because he had so much stress from the church that he needed that somebody to lean on. And I think we need to be aware of people that might need somebody to lean on and either offer or point somebody to them so that they do have that support.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've heard an awful lot about leadership, but I hope there were just a few more nuggets. We can always get a few nuggets from everybody. Deneen, I just saw your hand again. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to the beginning of how important love is in the situation, is that your people that you are leading in whatever field it is within the church come from a wide variety of people, and the importance of loving everybody as children of God is important too. And that then also can help you in your leadership and guidance with whatever it is that you're doing. But you need to fall back on that love and recognize that there are people who are in groups and doing things that you may not really like that much, but you can love them as a child of God, and therefore they are a part of the group, and you are the leader. That's all
Right.
I want to say.
Yeah. And I know as as a school principal, I used to take the most troublesome kids and give them a job. And sometimes when you have the Billy that's running around and you know, kind of disrupting the whole meeting there, that little cartoon with the little boy, give that person a job and then treat them with that love, like Janine was just talking about. And you can make sometimes the best worker bee out of a very troublesome person.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
just keep them busy and love them and appreciate them.
Yeah. When I was teaching, I had a boy whose name was Billy, and he was such a troublemaker and into things all the time. And yet I knew he was a student that I needed to be able to teach and help and what have you. And I did the best I could with him at the time. About 5 years later, when my husband was had a rented truck and was moving our stuff to move houses, one of the boxes fell off the truck and papers went all over the place, and some young boy came along picking up, helping pick up papers, and he said, "Mrs. Potyock, she was the best teacher I ever had." And that was the troublesome Billy.
You created a worker bee. That's right.
But that can happen in leadership positions too. Just
That's right.
Being helpful and you're not doing it for your own gain. I mean, I didn't do it for my gain. I was doing it for his purposes, for helping him. But it was a joy to know that he still got along okay.
You brought him along.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you for allowing me to meet with you, even from a hotel room in New York. And it was a real pleasure for me to be able to be with you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad we got to get onto the Zoom eventually too.
Yes.
Good. Good.
One
So-
follow-up question, hands up.
Sure.
The order of attack in this leadership talk tonight, is it in this particular order on purpose, or love, learn, lead, learn, and lean, right? Is it in that particular order on purpose?
I don't think so. That's a good question. I didn't really think about that myself, but now that you do pose it as a question, I would have to say, I think it jumps around because again, that new word that I've been hearing more now than ever before is that pivot word. We have to be able to pivot. And sometimes in our pivoting, we might not feel very loving. And so I think we have to draw back on the love. And we may not need to lean at a certain time, but then we may find that we do, that something's come up. And it requires a meeting of other people that may not be the direct ones we're working with. And we find that we need to, like, I need to call Deneen and have a conversation with her because I know I can trust her. And so I think that, you know, that's a time of leaning and learning. So I think that they can shift. I would say that those four things would have to shift as needed and when needed. So I don't think there's an order to that. No.
Thank you.
Mhm.